Back, boxing fans. Once again, we're having this conversation. And once again, the same old people are making this all about race. We just had a non black American stink out the joint fighting a very defensive, moving style of boxing, which would be considered the black American style of boxing. But it doesn't matter who boxes that way, whether it's a Bivol, a Usyk, a Fury, an Ortiz, a Shakur Stevenson, a Devin Haney, a Floyd Mayweather, a Willie Pep. It doesn't matter. Arislandi Lara, Rigo. If you fight in that way, fans are not going to be entertained, right? And you can make this a black-white thing, but it has nothing to do with race, not at all. It has to do with entertainment, sports entertainment. And I don't know how many times people have to address this and specifically break it down for people like this who are obviously challenged to actually comprehend it, right? You know, this guy used the analogy regarding football, talking about how if a running team in football came, it'd be like the team that they're playing against saying, no, you can't run the ball against us because football fans think that style is boring, right? Doesn't that sound the same? When you can't compete with a certain style, it's not about competing. I get the point about competing, but what he's missing is the whole point that there's styles make fights. And sometimes you got style matchups that are bad, right? Nobody expected Ortiz Lopez to turn out the way it did. Actually, style-wise, people felt it would be a much more entertaining fight. But it wasn't, because one guy chose to fight in a certain way, right? And you can defend it all you want. I think he won. So I'm not taking credit away from him. I gave him credit for winning the fight. But it was still a boring fight, not entertaining. And the fact that he didn't get the win means that it's going to be very hard for him to get fights moving forward based on that performance, right? I can use an analogy too, and I'll use several analogies to prove my point, which basically steps on the throat of your whole point. Many Americans find soccer, or football boring because there's not many goals and there's not much action, right? That's how people feel. Yet a team like Barcelona, who scored tons of goals when they had Messi and Iniesta and Xavi playing, was sort of the casual football fan, soccer fans team, because it was more entertaining, because offensively they produced a lot of goals, a lot of exciting plays to pay attention to. That's why globally Barcelona was loved, because of the style in which they played, which meant that even non-hardcore people enjoyed watching them. I'll give you another analogy, because I can do this all day, because it has nothing to do with fucking race. It has to do with styles and marketability and what entertains fans. That's it. So rugby. I know the majority of you don't watch rugby, don't know nothing about rugby, don't give a fuck about rugby. That's fine. If you actually leave and travel a little bit, you might be introduced to something different, right? Like this individual obviously needs that experience. I live in Taiwan, so obviously there's people from around the world that live here. So I met people from around the world who like different sports than me. Many South Africans, and they love rugby, love it. So I've been forced to go to bars, get drunk and drink with South African friends to watch rugby and big rugby games and World Cup rugby events a lot over my 20 years in Taiwan, even though I'm not a rugby fan. But there's one team in rugby that I enjoy watching, and that's New Zealand. And if you're a casual rugby fan, you know exactly what I mean. New Zealand, the All Blacks, that's not a racial term, the All Blacks are considered the casual rugby fans' favorite team because they are the far more entertaining squad out of all of them. They make a lot more exciting plays, they run a lot more on the wings. It's just a far more exciting brand of rugby. Whereas South Africa is a NFL version of I don't know, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball all day long. That's what South Africa does. And they're very effective with that style. But yet, it's not a style that casual fans enjoy. Obviously, if you're a South African and your team is winning, you're going to support it because you're supporting the team and the winning, not the style of play, right? Because even South Africans love when they have an exciting winger who scores a lot of tries and entertains them, right? It's just they don't need that to win. But when they have it, obviously it brings a whole new dynamic to the squad. Let's use some more examples of this. So we can talk about NBA or college basketball. Basketball is one of the most exciting sports. A lot of up and down, back and forth. And obviously we can look at the women's game and the men's game. Women's basketball is not considered nearly as entertaining as men's. Why? Because it's not as high flying, it's not as fast paced, there's not as much dunks, block shots, and entertainment of that factor. But even within the NBA or college basketball, Princeton college basketball team is very well respected because of the way they play. They have a specific style, right? A lot of back doors and a lot of good passing, a very slow, methodical style of basketball. Not the entertainment or the entertaining style that some fans would prefer to watch. But then you had other teams like, the Fab Five, UNLV, the Running Rebels, Houston, Pi Slamma Jamma, right? These teams were casual college basketball fans' dream teams because of the excitement they brought to the game, right? You did not have to be a huge basketball fan to love watching those teams play because they were high flying, fast paced, and exciting, right? Even in the NBA, Detroit Pistons, right, were a tough, rugged squad that beat the shit out of you and won titles, right? Yet they weren't a love team to watch. A team like the Lakers, who were a fast-paced squad, right, had a lot of breakaways and a lot of breakaway dunks, were a far more entertaining team and a team that Americans love to watch far more. And this is a game where even if you're Detroit, you're still scoring over 80 points a game. Yet the difference between 80 and 120, 40-point gap, and the entertainment and the action involved really makes a big difference. Football's the same. I've been a football fan for a long time, not so much anymore, but I always enjoyed offensive teams, dynamic offensive teams, teams that scored points from obviously the run, from throwing the ball as well. These teams were teams that I enjoyed, and generally teams that people enjoyed more. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Pittsburgh Steelers, teams that ran the ball a lot, were very effective defensively, controlled the clock, teams that were very effective, but yet not crowd favorites. Obviously, if you supported those teams, you liked those teams because they were winning, but you didn't like the style or brand of hockey, or sorry, football. I was getting to hockey, so it's in my head. Next, hockey. I'm Canadian, so let's use this as the example, the final example, because how many examples do I need to give you? And you can see that none of the examples I had to give you have anything to do with race. Of course, this individual makes everything about race, right? The slick black American style. Yet there's plenty of slick people who are not black or American, and they're not loved or revered because of their style, right? Because it has nothing to do with being black or being American. It's the style and brand that you fight, right? That's what entertains people. Inoue, a small Japanese fighter, no one cares that he's Japanese. No one gives a crap, right? The fact that he's Japanese just probably took it longer for him to actually break out and become a star. But the reality is the style that he fights in, the dynamic, aggressive fashion, this is what makes him entertaining. But let's get back to hockey. So hockey. New Jersey Devils. New Jersey Devils were a dominant NHL team for a long period of time and specifically played a defense-first style of hockey. And hockey is a game that can be very exciting. A lot of goals, fast-paced, a lot of action, or it can be very slow and not action packed as far as goals. It can still have lots of checking and lots of back and forth, but very little results, kind of like football or soccer. New Jersey had a great goalie who generally would have over 40 saves a game and would get tons of you know shutouts, not give up any goals. And they played the neutral trap sort of zone, which meant that they didn't let any team get through the middle of the ice. And what this did is it bogged up the game, took away any offensive excitement from the game, and made the game very boring to watch. Yet, if you were a New Jersey fan and your team was winning Stanley Cup after Stanley Cup after Stanley Cup, you were not complaining about the brand of hockey that they were playing because you were engrossed and happy with your team's victories, right? And that's the thing when you're a Floyd Mayweather fan. If you're a Floyd Mayweather fan, you might not like the style of boxing that he does, but what you are loving is his victories, his winning, the accolades he's accumulating because of the style of boxing that he's fighting. You would prefer if he was more exciting. You'd prefer if he let his hands go more. But as long as he's winning, you don't care because the results are still there. And we know this is true because these same fans focus and harp on his 49-0 record consistently, right? As if that somehow is a landmark mark that actually means something, and it doesn't really mean anything. But okay, so he's 49-0, fucking hooray. What does that mean? He broke a heavyweight record that was 48-0, a heavyweight record. That record was historic because it was heavyweights, not overall boxing record, because there's been guys who had far bigger undefeated records than that throughout history. So that wasn't specifically the mark to aim for. But, Floyd Mayweather fans use that because that is their Stanley Cup, their NBA title, their World Series, right? That's what they aim for. This is their victory. So because they're Floyd fans, they want that trophy to hold up, to validate them being fans of him. It's not so much about Floyd. It's more about them, the fans. And we see this with every sport, right? So then we get to the last example. And this is obviously still going back to football. I'm a Liverpool fan. I support Liverpool regardless of what manager is in place and what style of play Liverpool plays in. Whether they're boring, defensive, grinding out games, or whether they're very flowing, exciting, scoring lots of goals, and one of the most exciting teams in world football. It doesn't matter. I support them through the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows. But as a fan, I appreciate a far more offensive style of play more because I'm going to watch the games regardless, but I'd rather watch the games and be entertained fully by having Liverpool score tons of goals, score great goals, and be much more of an offensive team, far more like the Arsenal squads when Henry was the leader for them, and they were super exciting to watch, right? Even though I wasn't an Arsenal fan, I still appreciated and enjoyed watching that team play, right? Because of the style that they played. Style transcends, fandom. So of course, as a Liverpool fan, I've been very excited if we've had Klopp, who's played a far more aggressive, attacking, and high-scoring style of football. I don't know what manager we're going to get next. He could be completely different. He could be more like a Mourinho, much more of a defensive player, more like Rafa Benitez, who was similar to Mourinho, very defensive oriented, didn't necessarily have a high impact offense. And it won't matter to me because I'm a Liverpool fan. And see, when people want to make this all about race or all about them, we can see what you're doing. You're making it all about you. It has nothing to do with the sport, the athletes, the style. You're just so absorbed with your own fandom that you want to make it all about you and your narratives, when that's not even the fucking conversation. No one cares about that. That's not the topic. People are talking about marketability and excitement. People would much rather watch Tank Davis fight than Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney. All three young black American fighters, all very, very good, all potentially pound for pound top 10 fighters. Yet one fighter is somebody that people enjoy watching more. Why? Because of his style. Tank Davis is a far more entertaining fighter than Shakur or Devin Haney. He lets his hands go. He's got power and speed, right? He has knockout victories. When you watch one of his fights, you expect a knockout. You expect to be entertained, a la Mike Tyson, Iron Mike. When you watch a Shakur or Devin Haney, you never know what's going to happen. You could sit through a very exciting fight like Haney and Lomachenko, or a masterclass like Haney versus Prograis. Or you could sit through a snooze fest like Shakur and De Los Santos. And yes, Haney's had those snooze fests as well. So the reality of the situation is it's not about color, ethnicity, race. It's about style. And I don't know how long we've been having this conversation that we need to reiterate this point again and again and again. But unfortunately, some people are so obsessed with the whole race debate that they need to make everything racial. Literally come out with a video talking about how black American fighters fight all kinds of styles. Exactly. And then harping on the black American style and why it's not boring. It's just the opponent isn't good enough to expose them. No one cares about what the opponent is able to expose. Fans want to be entertained. That's ultimately why a guy like Arturo Gatti was loved and why he got rich in the sport of boxing, even though he was far from a pound for pound caliber fighter. Not even really legitimately a world champion, truthfully, right? He was not at that level. He had no business fighting an Oscar De La Hoya or a Floyd Mayweather. Those fights really should never have happened. But because of his entertainment, because of the name recognition he built, because fans enjoyed watching his fights, because much like Jaime Munguia, his fights are entertaining. Every single fight. Why? Not because he's so perfect. The opposite. Because he's not so perfect. Because he's vulnerable. Because it looks as if he could get beat at any moment. And because of that, it makes the fights far more entertaining, far more exciting. Nobody wants perfection. We've seen this in every sport. People build their legacy after they're exposed as not being perfect, and then they bounce back to show their heart, determination, and their dogness to win at any cost. This is what fans really love, right? That greedy, I will do anything to win type of mentality. Perfection is not what people want in anything. Even in art, people don't want perfection. They want, I'm trying to use a big word, but I can't even pronounce it right now or get it popped out. But they want things that aren't perfect, right? Which is a specific style for that individual artist. Perfection is not something people like. Oh, there you go. Superman is an example. And then Spider-Man. Which superhero is more popular? I'll give you a minute to ruminate. The truth is Spider-Man. Because Spider-Man is not perfect. He's fallible. He's beatable. At any moment, we know Spider-Man could be beat by the people he's fighting. But because of his dogged determinedness, there was one comic when he fought the Hulk, got his ass beat to smithereens, as you would expect. But that's what people love and revere about Spider-Man, as well as his quick wit and humor. Superman, dry, boring, impenetrable. You can't beat him. There's no way to beat Superman, which means He is a boring fucking character, not entertaining at all. We know this is what's going to happen. All of a sudden, Kryptonite's going to be pulled into the movie because this is the only thing that potentially can beat him. Kryptonite, right? And it's the same drawn out fucking story every single time. It's not entertaining. Perfection is not what people want. You may disagree with me, say that, racist fans think that this. Oh, no, this has nothing to do with race. Oh, anti-black fans think this. No, 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 this has nothing to do with black or fucking anything else. This is just truth. And if you're willing to look past your fucking ignorance, your racial fucking prejudices to see the truth of the story, then you will fucking actually see exactly what people have been saying for years now. But unfortunately, that's probably never going to happen because the truth is you're broken. And this has more to do with you being broken than it has to do with anybody else. But leave your comments below. Thanks for watching. Peace out, everybody.